And also pretty important for this class is any questions, any comments, go down to the bottom and push the chat button. And we'll try and kind of keep up rather than fitting in questions during the class. We'll try and leave everything until the last 15 minutes. So 6:45. So kind of keep things going in chat, and we'll try and catch up on questions. Okay, so to start, so this is our construction management class, and as you can see from the outline we came up with, it's a big topic. There's a lot to cover, and for me, it involves 40 years of experience, 40 years of learning. Before I retired last year, I think I finally kind of had it figured out, but so it's going to be really just kind of an introduction as much as anything, because there's so many skills to master. And another thing to note about this class is going to be pretty specific to San Juan County, rather than a general construction management class that could be taken to other disciplines, other areas. It's really pretty specific to my experience and Sandy's experience. So really kind of focused more on in this market, in our building market in San Juan County. So to get started, so Sandy and I are teaching the class. Sandy Bishop is with the Lopez Community Land Trust and has many years of experience building affordable housing communities on Lopez. A little bit of my background: I started my construction company, Ravenhill Construction, in 1978. About the time I decided I'd better become legal and start paying taxes. And so started small, expanded pretty quickly. So by the late 80s, early 90s, I was continuously employing 30 to 40 carpenters. And up until I sold the business last year, really kind of maintained that level of size of company and built homes on pretty much all over the county, on every island. At one point in 2008, we had 4 boats going out every day with carpenters to different islands. So we stayed busy. But at some point, kind of getting back to the subject of construction management, project management, I found that most of my serious competition was coming from Seattle, from some of the bigger home builders down in Seattle who were kind of invading San Juan County and really had that construction management component as a big part of what they were selling up here, as opposed to all of us small contractors who were kind of working out of pickup trucks. So I started, really back in the early 90s, started hiring project managers. Over the years, I've probably had maybe a total of 10 different project managers as part of my company. And really, as kind of an introduction to this class, it's important to note that most of my project managers really had very little hands-on construction experience. So it's not a crucial prerequisite to have a lot of carpentry experience to manage projects. Mostly they had architectural experience. Some had construction management experience in Seattle, but that is really kind of the biggest component. So that's kind of my history. If Sandy, you want to talk a little bit about yourself? So you're going to have to unmute.
Unmute here. And so my name is Sandy Bishop, and yeah, about maybe 35, 40 years ago, I got involved in construction management, and primarily was introduced to it through an architect who I was teaming up with to build some affordable housing. And he said to me right away, you absolutely have to understand construction management, because if you don't, these projects will all run away from you. And as one of our friends said, when you work in affordable housing, you have to treat every nickel like it's a manhole cover, it's meaningful, right? So he was my first introduction. And there was something about the way that projects were put together from the moment I stepped on the raw land until, we finished with all the landscaping, that I really, really appreciated. I appreciated the art. I appreciated the complexity. I appreciated this giant puzzle and all of the people that came together to make something work. It's kind of messy, and it's can be very stressful, especially when there's never enough money to do what you want to do. But that said, I've been doing it for a long time, and there's also something really attractive about it. And I think, whether you're come at it from a construction background or come at it through a design, or just, an interest in being a project manager because you're a great organizer, however you get into it, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you have the ability and the interest to want to take that many pieces of a puzzle and help to move the project into fruition. So let's see, I've worked on, my own house, probably about 45, 50 houses that we've done here on Lopez. And then also worked with bringing in a Nickel Brother house, which is a whole different side of management, right? The Children's Center, the skate park, the farmers market, and community garden. And I've also participated in a lot of sweat equity. So I come more from the nonprofit world than the for-profit world, but these worlds all have overlap, because whether you are working towards, building profitability in your business, or working for a nonprofit and never having enough money to do anything that you want to do, the organization and management that you apply will ultimately serve you, because as Pete said, a lot of what Seattle contractors were selling up here in the 90s was project management. And what comes with that organization is a lot of savings and coordination, and your jobs all start to run more smoothly as you have project management involved in it. And as Pete said, let's see, this class, there's a lot to learn, but it doesn't matter. I think both of us understand we're constantly learning in the job, and there are lots of ways to do things. Some people have more of a propensity towards getting everything and using a lot of technology. Other people, not so much. I think one of the key components is, just if you are prone to loving this kind of work, find what really works well for you and your clients, and be courageous in your approach to all of this. And from there, it's 5:41, so we'll start heading into the actual class. And remember to use the chat. I think some of you will be quite familiar with reading plan sets and all of that, but that's going to be part of what we are going into this evening. So just bear with us, and enjoy yourselves. Thank you.
And just, yeah, just a bit more background. You know, Sandy's expertise is, you know, not just with building, but in community planning, planning neighborhoods, planning communities. You know, my background is primarily custom residential, you know, one home at a time. But I also worked with the San Juan Home Trust building affordable housing for 15 years and supervised three projects. So, you know, definitely a big part of project management is not just in San Juan County, is not just residential. It is affordable housing. Communities is a big part of what we're doing here. And it's also fascinating. Just you know, all the considerations, all of the logistics. So yeah, with that, we'll move into just a confirmation that this is a trades class. It's you know, some people are kind of joining to just get more information about projects they're doing, but this is since it's economic development, it is specific to a job description. And it's important to note it's a great job. It's one in my company. It was always one of the highest paying positions. A good project manager is worth a lot because they in my case, they really lighten my load a lot from what I had to do as a contractor running the company. So that's always in the background. It's a tough job. It is emotionally draining. It's taken its toll, definitely. So that's kind of important to keep in mind. But a lot of opportunity that most in my business, custom home construction, most clients these days really demand a level of project management that back in the old days wasn't really available. So we're going to talk a little bit about what a project manager does before we get into plan reading. Because, you know, number one, plan reading is the basis. To even be able to start as a project manager, you have to learn that language, know how to read a set of plans, know know the specifics, know how to get material quantities, know how to do labor takeoffs to get to figure out labor costs, be able to use a set of plans to produce a project schedule. So that is really number one. And it's one of the reasons I said that my project managers over the years didn't necessarily have a lot of construction experience, but they knew how to read plans. So beyond that, really, we're going to be, you know, talking specifically about project managers, but it's really kind of talking about what it takes to be a contractor, because they're kind of doing everything the contractor is doing, except maybe the financial headaches, because they're just taking home a paycheck, which is a real plus. But they're doing everything the contractor's doing, meeting with architects, meeting with clients, meeting with specialists, talking to subcontractors, getting prices, establishing budgets, keeping budgets updated, keeping schedules updated. I've got a note on here which we'll probably be bringing up a lot: prepares and supervises safety plans. And that kind of carries kind of the whole safety component is, you know, carries through all aspects of construction. So that's why today we're gonna kind of focus a little bit on basic plan reading, to kind of get that out of the way before we move into other topics. Let's see, Sandy, do you have anything to add to just kind of class introduction, class overview?
No, I think you did a good job of saying that. There's really, when you're in any kind of, project management, you always are looking out for the whole, and you're making sure you've got everybody's back. The contractor, the client, you're really holding the whole, and that's important. I will screen share now if we're ready. And I imagine there's quite a number of you who have already, got quite a bit of experience reading plans. Everybody can see that okay?
It hasn't opened up. The plans haven't opened up yet.
Oh, they're on my screen.
Yeah,
You may have selected the wrong sharing option. You may want to stop share and try sharing again.
Yeah, okay. It shows up.
there.
Can you see that now?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Okay, so everybody's got it. So you guys, so a set of plans, they are going to basically, orient you, right? It's a roadmap to where you're going. And this first page where you're looking, you can see at one side, it tells you where you're located on the island geographically, where you are. And then there's another section here, and you can see, okay, we've got two, the drain field here and the secondary there, the dwelling. And, you get an idea for, okay, where this house is situated. Is it in a tight neighborhood? Is it on a piece of parcel, whatever? And then you're going to look at general notes and try your best to, when you get a set of plans, to just go ahead and read everything. Look at the energy code, look at the index, take the project team members and look at all of them, put all of that information into your database right away. And you'll note here on every set of plans, usually on that cover sheet, you will see there, you're either reading a permit set or you're reading a construction set. Are you all following that? So make sure on that first page which one you're doing. That permit set is what you're going to leave in your job shack, because every time the building inspector comes, that's what they're going to reference. But construction is what you really want to have on the site with you. And there's more details than that typically. So again, that's your first introduction. You read everything, make sure you're not on a draft set, make sure you're on an approved set. Look right here where it shows, okay, it's been signed and stamped. It's got the date on it. I don't know why it's not advancing for me.
Hey, and Sandy, if I can jump in a bit.
Oh, please, yeah.
Yeah, probably the most important thing on that whole page is the date, because it is pretty common on a job site that you have mountains of plans with different dates, and big expensive mistakes can be made by using a plan set that is maybe 2 days out of date or something. So there's, that's crucial piece of information
Yes, and
that plan
every
sets.
time you have a question and you're taking it to the architect or the engineer, you're getting something back, you're printing it out, and you're stapling it right onto that set. Don't just have a lot of papers flying about one way or another. So we're on the second page. Here's the general notes here. You can see there's all kinds of good information for you to take in. And, while you're building, just keep getting the lay of the land, okay? Because that's important. And mistakes, yes, can be expensive. This is just a little bit of a zoomed in. You can start to see what the elevation is. You can see where the dwelling is, where the trees are going to be saved. You start to get an idea of, okay, these are all the contours. So when you get into the foundation, what are you going to be coming up against in terms of contours? And you're starting to build the house and construct everything based on these sets. So you're using your imagination. You've got the project address. As soon as I get a project address, what's the first thing you do? You go out there, you just start walking around the parcel. I like to always take this parcel number and check it on the county database and make sure it's correct. Sometimes typos happen. You want to make sure you do that kind of thing. Anything you want to say about that, Pete?
Yeah, it's just like a lot of sets of plans that come from an architect. They may or may not be really complete. General notes a lot of times is just kind of boilerplate information that's been cut and pasted from other sets of plans. So it's kind of like a Where's Waldo of kind of looking through notes to find specific information that is, just for this project that you really want to pay attention to. So you're kind of wading through the boilerplate to find, pertinent information.
Yeah, and once you find it, highlight it.
Yeah,
okay?
exactly.
Because,
It's
here you've got, a project team, right? So you want to have all of these people, but make sure they're up to date, right?
And I always liked to get a set of plans that had me as the contractor listed as the project team, as opposed to, it's still in doubt because we're still talking to contractors. So that's kind of a minor thing, but it's always kind of a great thing.
Yeah. So, you'll see down here at the, this is responding. Down in this right-hand corner, those are where all the page numbers are. And you'll notice as we go through the pages, on this page, for instance, there are some details right on the page. Oftentimes when you're looking at plans, you will find some notations right on the plans and you go back into the set to look at details. But anyway, as we start going, and of course, this is, the surveyor has been out, so where to find your corners. This is just showing you some elevations. These are kind of important to look at. I like to have the surveyors go ahead and give me quite a number of elevations in the area that I'm going to be building, just because I want to know, every 10, 20 feet, what kind of slope there is. You can get some of that off of Polaris and whatnot, but as long as they're in the field, I just have them go ahead and set some elevations for me periodically.
Yep, and it's also great at times to have the surveyor, show trees, exact location of trees, which they can do as a good reference point to get offsets for staking. So a lot of information that the surveyor can provide on that plan set.
And now you notice here at this corner, the right-hand corner, where it changes just from being numbered, and it says A11. So we are now into the architectural set. Okay, and this is just simply showing you, okay, you've got the foundation and you've got the basic floor plan. This one happens to have a little loft, so it gives you a little bit of information there. But the important thing to note here is that you're now into the architectural set.
And actually, if you could, Sandy, if you could go back to that.
Yes.
Back to the first page. Yeah, it's just, I was kind of surprised over the years, the times I was reviewing a set of plans with a client and then all of a sudden realized that they really kind of didn't know what they were looking at. Just the whole, the ability to look at, the aerial view of a floor plan and kind of imagine what the spaces are like, being able to use the dimensions to, get the size of spaces, like so many things, it's learning a language that you need to really get comfortable with looking at notes. One of the things that's showing on this plan set is the numbers in small round circles are references to other pages, to details. So a lot of times, this plan view will take you to pages back in the back of the plan. So
yes, and we will. Pete is talking about this. Where you can see
right.
that. Whoops. I don't know why this is not really liking to go forward and back very much. But you'll notice, yeah, Pete is talking about these notations right here. And one thing that's really helpful, I think, between you and the client or anyone is to tell people to go around with the tape measure, take their plans, go around other people's places with the tape measure, if they're interested in that kind of a thing, because it really does help when you're building to have people around you understand what's happening. It's helpful for everybody. It makes people less afraid that something is happening. Now this is A21, so you'll see here. So now we're into the west elevation, the north, the east, and the south. So again, you're getting oriented, and the important part is that you're moving through the architectural set. You've already checked, you've made sure that you're on the permit set, right? You're in the architectural section, you've checked the date, you know that you're right there, and now you're looking at these elevations, and you're starting to get a feel for, as the builder or the project manager, how you are in your imagination going to put this together on that particular site. In this next page, A31, you're just looking at sections as though you're cutting, right through the house, and you're looking in, and you're starting to look at things again, as Pete pointed out earlier. See this dotted line here, and then it's got this line and a small circle. If we were looking at a regular set of plans, it'd be large enough to see. And what you're going to do is, when you're looking at this, you realize that they're calling out some details between all of, how the foundation and the roof are being tied together. Okay, so you will look at that and then later on look at the plans. Okay, and that you do that all the way through. So here's this detail. So you have to go to A4, okay, .1. And it's your third detail on there. This is your second detail on there. And you'll want to pay attention to those. It's always good, because if you can, kind of build this in your mind before you get too far down the path, you're able to ask the architect some questions before everybody gets onto the site about what they intended in some of these things. So again, now we're here at A41, remember that from the previous page, and we're at this wall section. There's the 3 wall section, there's the 2. And so now you start reading how these details and how they really mean to put this house together. And you just follow that same system all the way through your plan reading. And here it is again. It's a little bit more zoomed in so that you can see these different wall sections. And here, there's notes about the soffit. This is the exterior slab assembly, right? That's got another detail right here. And so you're going to have to look at that. And again, once you get used to reading these, you just, you train your eyes. Pete mentioned that this is much like a language. You're learning a language, and you're training yourself to see things when you read plans. And you're going deeper and deeper into it as you flip through the pages. We're still at the architectural set. We're at the details. And now, you can tell we're at, a lot of times these are cut and pasted too, just like the general notes are cut and pasted. So be careful with details. Sometimes they have lifted it from another project, put it into yours, and it may not quite work out for you. So again, it's a really good idea as you're going through all the details to make sure that in your mind it all holds together. And if it doesn't, hey, just call and ask them what they mean. So notice now we are changing from the architectural set, the drawings, and we are going into waterproofing. Waterproofing in the Northwest has become a very, very, very big deal. And so once you get a system down, waterproofing that is bulletproof for all of your windows, for every place there is a detail, around the sill, around the, how you're going to flash around a window, a door. A lot of people like to mock these up and make sure that they get a really good mock-up, and then you just send somebody around and they do that same detail on the house each time. But waterproofing, there tends to be a lot of details really to it, and you'll want to get familiar with them because just water and moisture and vapor is a real big thing in building. And there are lots of there's lots of product called out, and a lot of times, I think Pete will deal with this a little bit later in the class when you're looking at the specifications book, and you'll be sometimes not able to get what is spec'd, but nonetheless you can get something that's comparable. So now we've left, so we've been through the architectural, right? Now we're in waterproofing, and now we are into the electric. And so you'll see here, there is the electric plan and it corresponds. It's got an electrical schedule, and then it's got a lot of symbols, and there's also the mechanical. So this sheet is important. It's got a lot of information jammed into it, but that's okay. You will follow kind of the same set of use your same set of eyes on it, and you start to see there are some details here. For instance, in that electrical schedule that was on the page before, you will see on the plans themselves, these, A1, C, however their system works. And here we have highlighted, oh, H is the wall light, and that is located right here. So you'll just go around, because again, when you're doing your takeoffs, right, you want to have some idea. You're going to send this plan out probably to a few electricians, but you want to have some idea of what's being called out, because it's helpful for you to know what's happening. And if you're the builder, you want to know if there are, wall lights or sconces or ceiling lights, whatever, because it's going to make a difference. Now we get into the structural, and you'll notice here on the side, this is a different company, and it's got a different sign, a different stamp, a different date, all of this. And again, these notes are lifted from one set to another because, these people are licensed in the state of Washington, and oftentimes they do these things rote. So when they call out the concrete, when they call out the wood, all of that, it's pretty much the same. But nonetheless, it's important to read these things and highlight anything that really doesn't fit in San Juan County, and you won't be able to either get a hold of the material, or it'll cost you 3 times as much to get that. And you'll want to get with the structural engineer and sort that out ahead of time if you can, and get some recommended replacements on that. So we're into the structural, and this is the first page, general notes. These legends, those are important, and the index, so you know what's going on.
Actually, Sandy, if I could, can you go back to that?
Yes. Yeah, there you go.
Just something to plug in that is important for everything we're looking at is that we'll cover this later too under contracts, that this plan set becomes a contract document. So when you sign a contract to basically build this project, all this information is gospel. You are contractually bound to build the house exactly the way it's shown in the plans. And if not, you have to come up with documentation as to why you're providing an alternate. So that's why it's all this information is so important to kind of go through, and it's amazing the things you can miss. The little notes like the type of rebar note. There are things that if you miss the tiniest thing, it has a $ attached to it. So every page we've looked at, that is an important consideration, that this is what you're contractually responsible for providing.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. That is an excellent point. And that's why when you are reading these, and if you know something as a builder that they may not know as a structural engineer, you call them, you get it in writing, and you work it out together, and then you staple that. Don't tape it. You staple it right to the plans, and you have that documentation there that says, this note is being changed and it was signed off, by the structural, and you have all of your notations, because even if you agree to something on the phone, get them to write an email documenting it and staple it right to your permit set that is your record set. And you need to, like was just said, you need to make sure that you are following this, because it is a form of gospel. And so, yeah, now we're into the structural. This is the second page, and you'll see that we're getting into, a typical wall framing detail, shear wall framing. What are the hold downs? Especially during this supply chain disruption that we are experiencing, it's really important that you look at all these details. And if there are a lot of Simpson ties, called out that you might be a little obscure or whatever, make sure that you can either get a hold of them or come up with an alternative and get that nailed down right away in your process. Yeah, and look at the shear wall, just know what's happening in the structural. There's lots of details. And that, my friends, is the end of our session on just a typical residential set of plans.
Yeah, and that looked like a pretty good set. It's amazing the quality of plan sets that the project manager or contractor looks at, runs the gamut from napkin sketch to I kind of had a joke a while ago that I was going to start pricing out projects by how much the plan set weighed, because we were getting plan sets that were just massive, just weighed a ton. There are so many pages, and that's great. More information, the better. But it's pretty standard to work with plan sets that are lacking in information that you need to kind of chase down. Because as I said, as a contract document, you don't want a lot of gray area. You don't want a lot of surprises coming up. The more information on a plan set, to a certain extent, it takes the creativity out of building when there's just nothing left to doubt, but it's a lot safer. So.
Yeah, and Pete, just one more thing. There was a question about how do you separate the old set from the newest set? A lot of times I'll just take, because we've got a lot of people on our sites, right? I'll just take a pen and I'll, just mark right through it. It's not for use, but sometimes people like to have those pinned up or around. But in terms of all of the subs and the contractors, you need to make sure you circle and highlight on every single set that you give out, right? And I like to actually check them out to people. If you've got 8 sets, right? And then who's got which one. You've got, because sometimes different subs need to take them and go study them for a bit, right? But just make sure that the set that you are using has the same date and all of the same details. And if you're getting, even if it's a structural detail, staple it onto those sets so that people have the same information, if you can.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's helpful, but one of the things is that if you have like these older sets going around, it's best just to clear them out, mark them with a red pin, whatever, because you don't want anyone building off of them.
Yeah, it's guaranteed chaos when Yeah, there's a number of sets running around, some out of date. Subcontractor shows up on the job with an old set, and you've left for a couple of hours and come back, and they've started building something off an old set. It all happens. So yeah, documentation, just getting a hold of old sets plans and burning them, whatever it takes.
Feeding them to your worms, you can have a worm bin and stick them in there.
Yeah.
And remember, if you've got any questions or, need something, go ahead and put it into the chat room, because, in about 30 minutes or so, we'll be wrapping things up and going into questions and talking about what you can do between now and the next class that we're going to do.
Yep. So, yeah, so apologies to, I know a lot of the group here knows how to read a set of plans, has experience, so we're, kind of just going back to basics. So everyone's on the same page. But as I said, a crucial part of what a project manager does. So I'm sorry that we don't have a good example of 3D imagery, but that has become such a big part of what an architect provides. And it's not as important for the builder, but these days, almost the first thing an architect provides a client is 3D imagery, which basically you can see exactly what you can see a photograph of what the finished house or project looks like, including, walkthroughs, flyovers. It's an amazing tool, and it is useful for the contractor or project manager just to get a quick perspective on a project. But you can't rely on it for the accuracy you need. It's just a good visual to be able to, for example, in a house that's just framed, and be able to post basic photographs of what each finished area is going to look like when it's done. It's a helpful graphic, but it's kind of one reason we're not, as part of plan reading, we're not covering 3D and visual tools as much. Let's see, I had a note on the bottom. Yeah, basically back to incomplete plan sets. There's a lot of gray area there that a set of plans that's a contract document that's incomplete leads to potential conflict later. So it's really important when you're first reading a set of plans to figure out what's missing. Don't just plan on providing change orders later because the information is missing, because that's going to turn into a battle. It's really best to right away figure out everything that's missing, go back to the architect, go back to the clients, really do the work. And again, it's something that a lot of contractors kind of don't have time to do, but they get in trouble later. So it just kind of goes back to sets of plans that are in all different stages of completion. A lot of times we'll get a set of plans that the architect is just not, they just haven't had time to finish. They're desperate to get a set of plans in for the permit, expecting us to use them to get accurate pricing on. Yeah, just a little bit of the vision of chaos that kind of carries through every aspect of what we're doing here.
Well, and Pete, don't you think that part of this is that when you're running a job, a project, everything can be a crisis, right? There are lots of people involved. Pretty much nobody has time. Everybody is stretched to the limit. And so your job really as a project manager is to train yourself, because I mean, I don't naturally have that kind of personality, but train myself to step back a little bit and to always be problem solving and thinking a few steps ahead. For instance, asking, when you see the sub on the site, asking to see which set of plans they're working at, you just train yourself to ask some questions and to do some follow-up, because chaos will rule regardless, right? The best laid plans and all of that. But your job is to pull it as far back from chaos as possible and to just make sure it's a pleasant enough experience for everybody to be on the site. No, nobody's, I mean, I know people get very emotional about home and all of that, and I understand that, but really nobody's going to kill themselves over this type of thing. And your job is really just to keep things organized, make sure that all the information is there. If people are needing something or, in conflict, just figure it out. Right? That's
Yeah,
a big,
exactly.
And it's a big,
yeah, and everyone taking this class, you're going to find that Sandy and I are going to not be able to resist sharing war stories from all our years of being in the trenches here. So that's part of what you get with signing up for this class is, yeah, just years and years of doing it. It's we'll talk about it later. The ideal of what a project looks like is that at the end everyone's happy. And what it takes to achieve that is monumental. And it's one of those things you learn with time that you develop a second sense of, if this happens, then this and this is going to be a problem. So you try and anticipate things 3 or 4 steps ahead rather than it, hitting you right in the face. So yeah, lots of things to share. Beyond just the nuts and bolts here. Let's see, I think we can just about move on to specifications. Actually, before that one, I was gonna mention something at the beginning of the class that I forgot, just now that we're just kind of chatting. But this class we're presenting an ideal of construction management, which is the kind of traditional way that you want everything to happen. These days, the building climate in San Juan County right now is incredibly difficult. And so we're not going to focus on how to do construction management in this current climate, but take everything that we're teaching and add a complexity of 10 to what's happening right now with supply chain, with shortage of labor. Every subcontractor is shorthanded right now, which kind of leads into why we're teaching trades classes. But we're just going to kind of teach the way it should be in an ideal world. All right, let me see if I can actually figure out how to share the screen. That's it. No. Oh, okay, just a second. Is that the right one? No, that's not it. Let's see. Oh, let's see, Mickey, can you help me with that? I'm not able to bring up that that document, I
Yeah.
thought I had it down
Wait,
You
here.
want me
Which
to
one do
share
you
it on
want?
my screen?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, which one is it that you're looking for?
The budget breakdown.
Sample prelim.
Yeah,
Let's see.
I've got it here if you want it.
yeah, and
Is
yeah,
this the
that's
one, right?
great.
Oh, there you go.
And Sandy, if you can just kind of scroll down as we go through it. So this, again, kind of a disclaimer that this is the way I have always done budget breakdowns. There's a million ways to do it and present it. There are a lot of programs. There's a lot of software for doing bidding. This breakdown is representative of the way that I have always presented a budget breakdown with the amount of information I provide. And this is specific to a project that we finished a couple of years ago. So the prices are actual as of, I think, 2018 or so. But what I kind of want to present now is this is broken down in the format of a specification book that with a set of plans, a lot of times you'll get a full book of specifications, which is the information beyond what's shown in the plan set. It's specific, it's exact. Types of wood, exact fasteners, exact everything. But again, I didn't provide a copy of the spec book because they can be huge. They can be 100 pages long. And as with the plan set, I would always take a spec book and go through it with a marker and mark the pertinent information, because it seemed like 80% of it was just legalese, boilerplate, not really important information. But formatted the way I have this budget breakdown formatted. So the first part, general requirements, one is kind of miscellaneous. It's a place to put miscellaneous cost items that aren't pertinent to the whole job. This is information that will be in the first part of the specification book. Utilities, in here is testing, final cleaning. That's all part of the budget breakdown, but the spec book will kind of provide information that is not in other areas. So the second part is site work, which is basically everything it takes to get ready to be able to start building. So that will have information possibly provided by soils engineers, stormwater plan. That's a big one that's going to be part of the specifications under site work, and will also probably be on the plan set. Septic system, basic things like what is the power and water supply. Let's see, Sandy, if you want to scroll down. Let's see.
Adam, you'll need to mute.
Yeah, I think that's coming from you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sandy, do you want to scroll down?
Oh, I think Mickey has that control.
Okay. Yeah.
One thing I want to say, just real briefly, but as the general contractor and the project manager working for the general, When it comes to stormwater, you know, you still are responsible for hiring the CECL, the certified erosion control person. So, you know, that's in your budget, but like all aspects of the budget, you're going to have to, if you don't have somebody on staff, you're going to have to take into consideration who you're going to get and what all that's going to cost.
Yeah, no, definitely. Stormwater has become a big component of site management. Let's see, division 3. This breakdown might have missed a couple, like it doesn't show division 4, but division 3 is concrete. Specification book is just going to have everything pertinent to concrete. Again, you know, a big part of it is boilerplate, but since the spec book is a contract document, and you need to check it carefully for what's missing, what's pertinent. Steel has become a big component of, it's interesting, residential construction, both structural steel and architectural steel. It seems like has become kind of a standard as part of Northwest architecture. So then woods is, that's kind of an odd category because there's so many things included under it. It's actually technically it's called woods and plastics in the spec book, but we don't do much plastics. So it's just woods, and in my breakdown, I have all the carpentry, exterior carpentry, finished carpentry, and I have cabinets and casework always included in here, but sometimes it's included in a later part of the specification book. But this tends to be a big, as you can see from the cost total of this division, it's a pretty major part of a project. Is just what's within those. Let's see, moving down, thermal and moisture protection is, you know, that's kind of what Sandy was talking about with the waterproof envelope. And that in specifications books, there is more and more information about sealing and, you know, roofing components, insulation, different types of insulations, a lot of information under that category. Okay, doors and windows division. That is usually as simple, you know, seems to become as simple as speccing out a manufacturer and model within the door and window packages. But yeah, this, I'm just looking at this specific job, was pretty complicated in terms of the types of windows and doors. But again, information in the spec book will cover all of this. Glazing, you'll see at the bottom, it's not just windows and doors. There's shower enclosures, which can get really elaborate. Trying to remember why mirrors cost so much on this project. I think there were some expensive mirror components, but okay, then moving down, finishes. Yeah, drywall, tile, all the information on tile, including you know, manufacturers, exact specifications on type. The specification book a lot of times will have information on how they want it installed exactly. Painting will have paint brands and colors, specified. Going down, specialties is just kind of a catch-all for odds and ends. It seems like Division 10, Division 11, equipment is usually in residential construction appliances, in this case, wood stove and chimney. And then getting towards the end, mechanical is a lot of information provided under plumbing and heating. You're both in mechanical. That specification book hopefully gives a lot of information on plumbing fixtures, on again, requirements on exactly how it's done and materials expected to be used. Let's see, I should give Sandy, I should give you a chance to jump in if you have any comments on components here.
No, I think that's a good list. I mean, I'm always surprised. You know, we just finished building 4 homes over here for the costs that that these people built for one house. There are ways when you work in affordable housing, we all, those of us who try and do that, that we just have to cut certain things out, because if we want to build 4 homes for $1 million, that there's a lot of things we have to do and let go of, and there's other things that we have to do and add into the process. So, but we all have to do pretty much the same things, you know. So how do you get affordable? Because you don't want to really use materials that are not going to withstand the test of time. So, but you have to build a little smaller, a lot smaller probably. And your mere budget probably, you know, was as much as our entire bathroom was. There are things like that that you just start to look at. But in terms of the components and just looking at it, I think it's an excellent way to go ahead and budget. And I think, you know, the more that we go from project to project and do these things, we just, none of us are superhuman, and we just start getting comfortable and learning ways that are shorthand for getting to where we need to get. But yeah, it's got all the components in it. And when you're pricing, you got to know some of your people. The subs, the suppliers, that kind of thing. Don't you find that you can't just do it? You can't just do it in isolation. You could really miss the mark if you do that. And whether it's a time and materials, or if you're bidding a job, that's going to make a big difference too.
Yep. And we'll be kind of reviewing this cost breakdown in a later class. You know, I'm mostly just using it for specifications, divisions, but yeah, it's hard to avoid the numbers. You know, this is definitely not affordable housing. This is, but you know, that said, this project went through a ton of budget cuts from the original, you know, getting the original set of plans with everything that the client and architect dreamed of, and then me putting prices next to it, which were a lot higher than this price. And, you know, again, in a later class, we'll go over what that process is of budget engineering, we call it. But we came up with a lot of cost alternates, a lot of, came up with a lot of cuts, and came up with a house that they were super happy with. So, but let's see, and to finish this out, Division 16 electrical, again, a lot of important information to be gleaned from the specification book on not just light fixtures, but you'll see there's a whole section in here of home automation, which is which has become a big component. There's you know, home automation systems we're putting in that are hundreds of thousands of dollars of communications and media and sound and You know, it's a big component, and a lot of very specific information needed to price that accurately. So that, let me see the notes here. So that's kind of a quick review of the draft spec book, which is part of the list of contract documents with the plan set that Sandy showed you, the spec book. A lot of times also with the spec book, we'll get finished schedules, which will just be lists of materials, you know, exact light fixtures, exact plumbing fixtures, exact paint colors. It's all, like I said, the more the better, the more information, the better. It means a ton of work, but in providing, you know, a cost breakdown like the one you're looking at, you don't want to give a lot of guesses. You know, like I think looking at this, I think that electrical number is suspicious because it's such a round number. I think that was kind of a guesstimate because we didn't have an electrical plan at that time. But, and, you know, light fixture allowance there, that's just a big round number. I would always rather have very exact numbers to provide rather than guesses. But if you don't have the information, that's all you can do. So that is, let me see, I think our time is just about perfect here.
It's great.
To go
So
into
should we go to a few questions here?
that, I think we've got time for that. If anyone wants to unmute, hold your hand up. If
Well,
anyone has,
we've got some here in the chat. First one is from Bruce Clark. I'm concerned about ensuring proper codes and standards are followed. What is the project manager responsible versus general contractor versus architect versus the sub? It seems like there's lots of opportunities for things to go sideways. And you're right, there are. I think that when you're asking this question, you know, like, where's the so-called chain of command, right? The general contractor has hired the project manager. The general contractor has hired the subs, right? So the general contractor is really responsible for making sure that all the proper codes are followed. And the architect has been hired by the owner, and the architect, by signing and stamping those plans, has basically, through this legally binding set of plans, guaranteed that these plans meet current code. And if they haven't, they've usually been, you know, red stamped by the building department. So it's important that the project manager speak, you know, very openly with the general contractor on seeing anything and making sure that that role is clear. That's all I say. There's no right way to do these kinds of things. You know, the general can come in and say, you know, I prefer to do this way. But really, the project manager needs to make sure that that role that they're taking on is real clear, because they're hired by the general, and the general is ultimately responsible for ensuring that this thing is built to code.
yeah, and again, we'll cover that in later classes, kind of the insurance and bonding umbrella that the contractor provides, the safety umbrella. But in reality, the contractor is really responsible for just about everything. The project manager is responsible for providing that overview, but the liability really comes down to the contractor, making sure codes are followed. It's yeah, making sure that everything's being done per contract, per plan set, being responsible for what the subcontractors are doing. Much as we'd like to think that the subs are responsible for their work, so much of what the contractor, project manager, foreman do is double check all of the subcontractors. You just assume that there's going to be mistakes made because the subcontractor is moving from job to job to job. And you need to pay attention to everything they're doing. So
The next question here is, seems like we skipped over 2 and 3. Will we get back to those topics? And 2 is the description as a trades class. And Pete spoke to that. What a project manager
Yeah, I kinda
does,
did that.
reading the plans. And then 3 is how a plan is prepared by an architect or designer. And how
right,
a
we didn't,
plan-
yeah, why don't you go ahead and talk about that, Sandy? We did miss that. Just what is the process for how an architect prepares a set of plans?
Gosh, it's all over the map, right? Because it depends on the client. I hope this is getting to the point that Greg asked. So, you know, typically, well, there is no typical in this world anymore, but let's say that you are somebody local and you know that you want to hire Ravenhill, right? You would, and you might ask them for a recommendation of an architect, who they've worked with and whose details they like. And you might see a house that Ravenhill has built. It doesn't really matter how you find it, but the architect is hired unless you're doing spec housing, right? But if you're just doing a custom build and that's typically what happens here in San Juan County. I'd say that was 90% of all that's done here. They're not spec houses, right? They're just custom homes. The client has hired the architect has designed. If the client understands enough, they will invite the contractor during either the schematic or the design phase of the house. They'll invite the contractor in with the architect, and they will begin to talk together about some of what the design entails and how it can be built and what their cost concerns and all of that are. Otherwise, an architect firm is hired. They design, a permit set and then a construction set. They send them in, then you go out and look for a contractor. In that way, and Pete spoke to this, sometimes there's value engineering that needs to happen, because once, you'll hear people, right? They thought they were building $1 million home. Well, it turns out it's 3.2 million. And what went wrong? And it makes people very upset. So for any contractor, project manager, owner that's out there, I always say that if you can find a way to have a relationship between the owner, the contractor, and the designer, even if it's after the permit stage and before the construction drawings, I think everybody is so much happier.
Yep, and we'll be covering that in, I think, the last class too, just the relationship between contractor and architect and owner. But yeah, just to expand on what Sandy said a little bit, it kind of ideal projects that I worked on were ones that I got involved really early on with the architect and client as a team, and kind of, simplistically provided pricing as they were designing, because historically the process was that the contractor would get a beautiful finished set of plans and then be the one to tell the client that it's double their budget. So, based on that, we kind of moved into a process of working at early stages to price things out as they were designed, basically, and reach a finished set of plans that was consistent with the client's budget. And we got a lot of jobs that way, non-competitively. Clients hired us based on our track record doing that without really talking to other contractors. So, and architects recommended us based on that process too. So that's we'll cover that later, but it's a really important process.
And I wonder, before we move on, if we should ask Greg to unmute and see if there is something else in particular you would like in either that section 2 or 3. And while you're unmuting, I just want to say to Lucas that spec book that Pete was referring to, he basically made that budget based on those specifications that were in the book. But the book itself is, a few hundred pages, and I don't know if there's one you want to look at. We could probably make one available.
Yeah, I was trying to find one that I had on. Yeah, they're gigantic and really boring. That's all you need to know. So I just kind of went over kind of the highlights, but
yeah. But let's go back to Greg. If you're there.
Hey there.
And are you there?
Yeah, you totally covered it. I had read it. I had read it a little bit wrong, not as a description of what they do, just bullet points, but as going through some of those things. So now I see that we'll get into that in more detail later on.
Yeah. But does anybody else have any questions? We are about 7 minutes before 7. So we've got a few minutes left, or we can end a little early.
Yeah, I think in general, we'll always leave kind of the final 15 minutes open to questions. But if we run out of things to talk about, we can always quit early and go have dinner. So
yeah, that's what you do on a good job,
Yeah.
All done.
And also be sure to send in comments too if you think there's things that we can do better. I know personally I've never taught a class before, so I'm just up here kind of blabbing away. So yeah, send notes of things.
Pete and I have never. Yeah, we've never worked together before either. We know each other. Yeah, so if you need some things from us, just ask. And I want to tell you all that one thing that Pete and I discussed before the class, it'd be really nice if all of you, if you are not familiar with a set of plans, if you actually get your hands on a set of plans and try and just flip through them and get more familiar. It will be advantageous. So that's kind of your homework for that between now and then.
Yep. And then as you can see by our schedule, next week's class is going to be called Team Players. And yeah, that's going to be a good one, just because it's such a big part of being a contractor, being a manager, is knowing all the players and having communications down. That is huge. How to not get bogged down with insane communications. Anyway, that's going to be next week's topic.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. You can either put anything in the chat or you can unmute yourself if you have questions. And otherwise, we are going to call it good for this evening. Thank you all very much.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.